I think I struggled a little bit for identity because I based my whole identity around sport.
Yeah.
Suddenly you can't do it. Mm-hmm. So when you've got a sport, you're going for something, you're always on track. When you don't, I don't know where to put the focus and the intensity and the things that I guess make me me.
In today's episode, we speak to Alex Pillow. Alex is a real expert in the risk and fraud industry. We talk to him about his time in Australia door-to-door selling, all the way through to being involved in huge acquisitions in this space in recent years.
The fintech stuff had started to work as a side project, and then I went, I'm going all in, because if I don't, then I think I might get fired at some point. A couple of years later, that was the fastest growing book, continued to be even after I handed it over and left the business. That was a bet that I made that paid off. I saw a trend, didn't understand it, but leaned into it. Once I started to understand it, I started documenting what that was. I didn't know that at the time that was called ideal customer profile. I didn't know that that's what it was called, but I just did it organically, naturally.
For me, as someone who started a company in this space, to have someone like you who knows the space that my company is in inside out is a privilege, because when I started it, I didn't think that we'd be having these conversations, so it's nice to have you.
Yeah, don't know about inside out, but no, enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. These things are amazing because actually they give us a break from our day to day as well. And like, I know how intense your role is, and I think you know how intense my role is.
Yeah, well, I definitely know how intense your role is. The CEO role, I've seen a lot of people do it. When I was in sales, I was mainly selling to CEO and COO because I was selling to fintechs or this bit of my career. I've gone into the RegTech space, and you've got to be everything, right? And it's on you, and you take the responsibility and the pressure, and you've got all the stakeholders, the customers, the VCs, the board, the partners, the sales, the staff, etc.
Your friends, your family.
Yeah. My role, I don't know if I'd say it's intense. I mean, I enjoy intensity to a point.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's very varied. I normally talk about just spinning the plates, getting to the next plate, and then finding people who can spin the plate better than you.
Yeah, nice. That's a nice analogy.
And I try to make sure I remember that I do enjoy it. Even when you have a bad day, you go, but I do enjoy this, compared to just being some cog in some machine.
Oh, of course.
And being told what to do and all those things, because I've worked in those environments before and never got the best out of myself.
Yeah, it's not nice, is it?
Yeah.
So right now, who do you work for and what is your role?
Yeah. So I'm part of Moody's, and within Moody's there's the ratings agency called Moody's Ratings, and then Moody's, which has the software and data and analytics businesses. It's a bit different business units in that. I'm in the compliance and third-party risk business unit, and I look after the commercial strategy group that is in that unit, and we look after business strategy, the pricing strategy, and the operations of that, inorganic growth. And then we're standing up an enablement function as well that will serve the sales teams and customer-facing teams of Moody's.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Am I looking at that too simply? Like, that's a broad...
It's very broad. I think the nice things that happen quite organically.
Yeah.
So I was in sales for about 10 years, did reasonably well in the latter half of that. I think it took me the first 5 to learn what I was doing, and then the second 5 sort of was able to monetize it and do well and learn some things along the way that, looking back, were actually me just doing strategy because I hated cold calling. So if you pick the right shots, you don't have to take as many. Yeah. But when Moody's acquired the business I was part of, which was called RDC, now just think of it as Moody's Screening, there was an ask to help integrate the stuff we were doing, which I'd done many times with partners, into the existing stack they had. And I was like, I can help with that. So I started helping. And I was like, this is really fun, actually. This is a different thing. Intellectually very challenging. Mr. Product Strategy, the MD at the time, what if I came work for you? And then that happened sort of 6 months later. And then whilst I thought I was going to go learn how to do product, and I was doing all these courses online and learning the lingo and all the stuff, it turned out what you really needed was kind of a general strategist. And then that role kind of became being a fixer, which is, hey, we need to look at this piece of M&A. Can you help? Yes.
So today, are you a fixer?
I was. And I think I was from mid-2020, or end of 2020 to end of 2022, where I had, hey, help with this M&A, help with this. Can you fix pricing? Can you figure out how X goes into Y? Yeah. Can you go work with sales team to do this? For your experience? Yep. Just keep saying yep. Yeah. And then figuring it out as you go. And then when that MD moved on to a new role outside the company, it was like, hey, we know that you guys do stuff and you've been very productive. Well done for being productive. But can you build some teams? Can you make sure that that's repeatable, that if you left, it would still function. So that's when we sort of started building out that group, and kind of defining, well, what is it I do? And I was like, well, there's business strategy. That's figuring out what to do, or what bets should we take. There's pricing, which kind of speaks for itself, and obviously very important for every business. Inorganic growth is both certain types of partnership and potential M&A, where we were busy at the start, and then we've done less over the last couple of years while we integrate the existing things. And then enablement's new, where they've sort of looked and said, we'd like to bring up the level of all our customer-facing staff in terms of their ability to problem solve the solutions we have, and you've done that in the past career. So could you figure out that? So so it's happened quite organically. It means I'm never starting from nothing, which is great.
Yeah, that's true. You're picking things up that are in flight to a certain extent and trying to optimize them, right?
To a certain extent, yeah. Or sometimes I actually like it when there's a blank sheet of paper.
I'm sure. Because
then you go, right, well, I'll build it in the way I think is best and then learn if it fails, and do the next version and the next version until you get something that works. Because when there's nothing, you can set your own bar and then try and improve.
Yeah, that's fair. So if we take it all the way back, I like to start at school, because clearly you wouldn't have had a clue that the job you have today existed, and you probably wouldn't have even known who Moody's were. Where was school, and did you enjoy it?
Primary school, I lived 30 seconds from it, so that was I loved the commute. And then secondary school, went to a place called Chislehurst and Sidcup Grammar School in Bexley, in South East London, and that was about an hour commute, so I didn't love that. But
was it grammar school because you were academic?
Yes and no. I didn't live close enough to any state schools, or grammar schools are state schools, right? Just with an entry requirement. But I didn't live close enough to get it on first round of anything.
Yeah.
I failed the test for the super selective schooling area, and I did the 11 plus. And because my older brother already went to this school, I then got a place through sibling, despite not living close enough. So I had one choice, but it's probably the right one for me. It was a rugby school. I wanted to play rugby.
Was that your thing? Was it always rugby?
Yeah, with my dad, you didn't necessarily have a lot of rugby guy. I played football as well at primary school, but then after 11 stopped playing. Yeah. And in my head, that's what I went to school for, because exams were past themselves. I never had a problem with figuring out the mark scheme. I won't say I was actually that smart, but I could figure out what the game was and then play that to the point I needed to.
So do you reckon you put more effort into sport than school?
Sport was hard because physically not the strongest or the fastest.
You're saying that you lift crazy numbers now and you're still competing lifting weights. So that's maybe a result of not being able to be that strong when you were younger, maybe?
No, I enjoy it. So I've done it for 20 odd years, not to blow smoke up your ass, but not and maybe not as high as yours, but I enjoy it. Enjoy the cardio side as well. So at the moment, I just enjoy keeping fit, and now I've found something I can do that isn't rugby, because I've had to retire from various injuries. So,
but at school, you were trying to play county, all that sort of stuff, and trying
to win every game, right? So I'd say.
Do you ever want to be a rugby player?
Oh, like every kid.
Yeah, but really, really. Like by the time you get to 14, 15, you're still thinking that's an option?
Probably, but probably delusionally.
That's fine, we're all delusional.
Yeah. I realised at 17 that wasn't going to be in the cards, but still thought I could maybe go to uni and play at a good level.
Fine.
Picked my unis based on which ones had the best rugby teams. And then 6 weeks into uni, destroyed my shoulder, and that was the end of that.
Damn it. So which uni did you go to?
Bath in the end.
Yeah.
Had Loughborough or Bath, but they had the same entry requirements I had to pick.
Yeah.
And hindsight, maybe should have done Loughborough, but at the time I figured Loughborough was more of doing the same lifestyle, same mindset, etc. You kind of have to buy it all in there, was my view of that uni, which I think is a great uni.
Do you think that when you went to uni, you had any idea of what the career might be? Did you have some preference subjects at school and think you might go a certain way?
I sort of followed 2 tracks. I was good at communication, so my English teacher said if the exams were verbal, we wouldn't have to work at anything. But
there's an argument they should be verbal as well.
Exactly, but they're essay based, so I had to work a little bit on. I was a very slow handwriter, so I couldn't ever finish an exam paper, but could tell a good story. So I did English and classical civilization, did history and stuff like that, which is essay based, by being able to make arguments and do them in the right way. My grammar was really poor, but the vocab's all right. And then I did sciences because I just loved PE, biology, and just learning how the body works. I wanted to apply that to myself.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I followed both tracks. The school tried to push me in an academic direction at the
Of course
end,
they did.
and said, no, I wanted to do sports science because I thought I wanted to work in pro sport. Having said, well, I'm not going to be an athlete, but maybe I could work in it.
Interesting. Was it like a physio? Or
I didn't know yet, but I was
Okay.
like something in the realm,
Yeah.
and this would be a route to go down.
Yeah.
The school tried to push me to a more academic route because my exam results, I looked at that, and then a guy who was been my captain at school, so I played a couple of years up, and the guy who was the captain I looked up to passed away the year after he left school.
Holy shit.
I then found that out, was at an open day for one of these academic degrees, and the guy was up there saying, if you're not passionate about the subject, you don't do it because you won't survive the 3 years. So I just got up, walked out, did my application for sports science, and kind of said to the school, well,
Really?
don't care. I think it is an academic subject if you do it in the right way.
Yeah. Isn't it funny that they were pushing you that hard? But fair play to you for
Well, just,
doing what you wanted.
yeah, you kind of got to that point of, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, did you enjoy what you did the day before?
Yeah, it's a shame it takes something as brutal as that to give you
Yeah, a bit of perspective.
Yeah. So then you go to uni. I know what it's like where injuries like curtail dreams.
Yeah.
So you do your shoulder. Like that must have been a bit of a weird thing to get your head around because you're like, I'm not going to play this thing that I always thought I was going to play, but I have got the sports science thing, which means
Yeah.
that I'm on the track.
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of look at uni now as probably a bit of a, not a waste of time. I got things out of it.
Yeah.
Met my wife.
There you go.
So that was pretty
Shout
good.
out to the wife.
Yeah, that was pretty good. We didn't get to go till after university, so arguably maybe we could have met.
Okay.
Anyway, but we did meet originally there.
Yeah.
I think I struggled a little bit for identity because I'd based my whole identity around sport.
Yeah.
Suddenly you can't do it.
Mhm.
So what are you? I was like, well, I don't want to be the academic guy because I revised 2 weeks before the exam and then I pass, and that's how I do this.
Yeah.
I don't actually learn the thing,
Yeah.
which in hindsight, wasted opportunity. Could have really learned way more, could have applied way more if I just had the right attitude,
Yeah.
which probably didn't come until late 20s. And then it was like, well, what are you here for? Well, a lot of drinking, a lot of this
Yeah, of
stuff,
course.
trying to find a different identity. I think it was only my last year I kind of figured it out. I got into track and field, did 800 meters, wasn't particularly great, but I was like okay.
Yeah.
But having a group again and having a structure and a training plan.
Yeah.
And I remember my granddad passed away a decade or so ago now. He was sort of like, I'm pleased you got this because when you've got a sport or you're going for something, then you're always on track.
Yeah.
When you don't, I'm someone who needs something to go chase
What,
down.
you find you drift?
Yeah,
maybe?
I don't know where to put the focus and the
Yeah,
intensity
yeah.
and the things that I guess make me me.
I think rugby's a really hard thing to have as your grounding point because it's so all-encompassing and it gives you such a release.
Oh
that
yeah,
it's really hard to leave behind, isn't it?
well it's like you can cross the white line, as they say, and then you can be almost your true self, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't the most physical player, certainly a
Yeah.
terrible bloody tackler, but I played scrum half, which for those that don't know means that you boss around 8 people who are much bigger, stronger, more athletic than you.
I've never thought about the scrum half psyche
yeah.
after rugby.
Yeah, to achieve the outcome of the team that the team wants, and so
Yeah.
you're there for your mind
Yeah, that's
more than you are
fascinating.
typically your athleticism. There are some that can
Yeah.
do both. You know, DuPont, best player in the world, has both.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, struggling where to go with this or where I was trying to get to, but
No, but leaving that behind, having that here's what I'm doing and here's why I'm doing it, and having a purpose.
Yeah, it's that I'm competing, right? So
Yeah.
while I'm on this pitch for these 80 minutes, not anything goes. There are obviously laws
of
and
course,
etiquette
yeah.
and things like that, but it's like I know exactly what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
It is to get my team ahead of this team by the time of the final whistle,
Yeah, of course.
by any means necessary within the law.
So you get to the end. So you left the rugby behind. You get to the end of uni.
Yeah.
And it feels as though there's an identity within athletics, which is great. To your granddad's point, you've got
Yeah.
something that puts you on the track. Excuse the pun that you
Yeah.
made. But from there, what does your career look like? Did you have any idea what you were going to do?
So I thought I was going to work in pro sport, right? And the good thing about degrees at Bath, which is why I went there, was they had a placement year in industry between second and final year.
Yeah.
So you go off. I really lucky. Got
That's
a,
uni saving grace, by the way.
yeah.
Everyone we've had on here that's done a placement year has said that was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing that changed the course.
So I went and did an internship with New South Wales Institute of Sport in Sydney, which was pretty good touch. The guy in the year ahead of me had gone and done that, messaged him and said, hey, how'd you get that? He told me, do this. So I did these things.
Is that like post-Sydney infrastructure, like post-Olympics infrastructure?
Yeah, literally based next to Olympic Stadium.
Really? So, and is that sport-specific?
Yeah, so it's like the biomechanics, the physiology testing, the strength and conditioning, a couple other bits all in one place.
For athletics you were doing this?
For all sort of sports that run through the Olympic programme, for the New South Wales-based athletes in that state, and they have one in each state.
Jeez.
And I did it for 6 months and realised I hate this. I don't want to do this for a living.
Why do you reckon that was?
I think I wanted to be the athlete.
I knew that was going to be
the answer. like again, took a bit of hindsight, but at the time you're going, well, there's no money in this and there's no career path, and you get the job and that's kind of it. Like if you get it. And I was
and also you don't get to put your boots on and feel that passion and feel that energy.
I'll be honest, some of the athletes are so bloody talented, but they just don't have a work ethic, some of them. And I was like, this is galling. As someone who worked really, really hard, to watch people who have way more talent waste it is a horrible feeling.
I always thought that about really, really big dudes.
yeah.
When you're 6'8" and you weigh 20 stone, just get something about you. And play in the next World Cup.
So I quit the internship, and I don't think my uni's going to care now that I didn't officially complete my placement year, but had the athletics coach out there sign me off and say I did something with him. Got a job door-to-door selling car servicing vouchers.
In Sydney?
In Sydney, so I could stay out.
So you've got I love this stuff. So you've gone over there to do this athletic institute because you think that's where you're going to go, and then you're like, sod this, I need some money, I'm going to go door-to-door selling.
It was more, I don't want to do this because it's not going to be a good use of my time, but I want to stay here. I've made some friends. It'd be a waste of a visa to not stay. So how am I going to do that? Okay, start applying for jobs. Went to this one. Got on with the guy, and he said, look, it's commission only. You don't get any salary, but if you do this, you get this much money, and then is that enough to live on and have some fun? I was like, I think so. Did that for the rest of the time I was there. Was okay, wasn't amazing, but I was okay. We did have a really good hot spell, me and a buddy that I lived with, this Irish fella, and we had this kind of policy for a few weekends of get paid on Friday, spend it all by Monday, and then go back out.
Make it again.
And at 20, 21, it's a good
brilliant
little life experience. And there were some times I hated it as well. And I remember calling my dad one time, going, I don't know what to do. And he's going, well, look, you've made your bed, so get on.
That's good advice.
Yeah. You've made your bed, so never sell something you don't believe in. So do you believe in it? I was like, yes, it does save people money if they use it. Cool. So all the worst that can happen is that they say no.
Yes.
Stop worrying about it.
Knock on the next door.
Go. So when I finished uni, I went back, finished uni, and then...
Was that not a bit strange with, you wanted to do the sports science stuff? You've gone over there and realised probably you don't. You're then back in Bath rather than being in Sydney.
Yeah.
I bet that was a tough year.
That was the best year, actually, because I had clarity. So
nice.
I did a fun run in Sydney.
Yeah.
Somebody said, you should join an athletics club.
Yeah.
I joined the Sydney University Athletics Club, made some friends, got into 800 metre, and when I moved back, joined Bath Uni Athletics Club. That gave me the thing to work on, so it gave me structure. And then I also realised that I really liked sort of going and making my own money. I suddenly, rather than trying to do one part-time job, I had 3, and then would fit studies around that. And I changed all my studies from being focused on physiology and biomechanics, which I sort of thought of before as the science part, to no, I just want to learn psychology.
Okay.
And teams
that would help you with selling?
Help you with anything. Right. So team psychology, team dynamics, leadership psychology, how do you do behavior change? We learned a technique called motivational interviewing, which I use constantly.
Right, I've never heard of that.
It's not much to it. It's ivory tower people putting nice words around literally being a good listener. But there is a technique to it, I suppose. So I pivoted everything to that, and then once I'd graduated, then all the the graduate recruiters went, you've done sales? I was like, yep. They're like, I feel like I get you some sales interviews then. And I was like, okay, I'm on the train, let's figure it out.
Isn't it funny that you just fall into stuff?
Yeah.
So then you finish uni, and so you've got these grad recruiters were don't care about you.
Agreed.
They just care about filling the roles.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're at interviews and not. Were you happy with life carrying, going straight into the world of work straight from uni?
Yeah, I was pretty excited for it, to be honest. I'd enjoyed the part-time work I was doing. I worked in a nightclub. I did some marketing for some brand, sort of on a ad hoc basis. What else did I do? I've forgotten now. There was some other job I did as well. And I was like, this is great. I've got my own money, not taking any, help from dad or anything, paying all my own bills. And, by the time I finished uni, I literally managed to get my bank balance to zero rather than minus in the overdraft. And I was like, I'm going to call that a win.
Yeah, that is
and
a
now
win.
I'm going to start work 4 weeks after I left Bath. So like very short period of time. And in a month's time, I'm going to have some money and then figure out how this goes. I think I was on a PIP 3 months in, but that PIP did motivate me to actually try a bit harder.
So a PIP is, my understanding is when you're not performing, they give you a plan and say, if you don't hit this plan, then you're out. We've given you a chance.
I think, again, in benefit of hindsight and a bit of maturity, I look back and go, it wasn't the right environment for me in terms of people. Like nothing wrong with the people, it's more my issue than theirs, but I didn't fit into that particular company. But I will say that I was there for 20 months in the end. Gave me phenomenal sales training. They had a program called Sales and Service Professional Development that you went through. And once I completed that, I was like, right, now I'm going to leave because I'm not going to not finish this because I know I'm just as good.
So do you think as you're going through doing the intense sales training and like having been there myself, the low salary, high commission, proper sales training, long hours, like you do question yourself a lot. But do you think that you knew that like some sort of commercial role or sales was going to be your career? Because you've only just changed into that, right? So there's still going to be a lingering doubt.
I was still going back and forth. I really seriously wanted to join the military for a while. And then I couldn't because of the injuries I'd had from rugby. So I kept failing the medical.
Really? So you literally applied for the military?
Yeah, just like the online thing, but I kept getting screened out by like how many of these have you had?
And concussions and dislocations and all that nonsense.
All the stuff. And I was like, oh, this is ridiculous because I know I can do all the physical tests they have. But I suppose what they're thinking is, well, if someone comes, does the thing, gets injured, we then pay for their treatment. It's not a good financial investment. So I wanted that lifestyle or that intensity, and I wasn't finding that in work.
Sales isn't a bad place to have intensity in your lifestyle, especially at that early stage.
I think, again, in terms of the environment, it's that I probably need to have multiple plates spinning and need to have... I tend to think of it as people talk about, what do you want this? I want to be happy. Yeah. And I kind of go, well, actually, I'm less worried about that. I'm more worried about engagement. How engaged am I? And for me to be engaged, I need to be in a competition that I care about.
And competition's a big thing for you, hey? It is for me as well, but competition seems huge.
But it's the competition you care about. So, like, when someone says, hey, we're going to put a leaderboard of the sales, I'm like, don't manipulate me. I don't care. I have no interest in that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
are you going to give me a certificate as well?
Like you can even pat on the head afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't respect that. Whereas if you say, hey, we as a business, a team, kind of probably that rugby mentality, want to beat these external competitors, or we want to achieve this change in the world, or we want to achieve this change in our industry, and that matters because then I can get behind it and I'll go, what does the team need? And if you need me to be scrum half and figure out where we're going to go on the pitch, then I'll do that. If you tell me I just need to put my shoulder to the wheel and push, then that becomes the job. But because it's in service of the team that I feel part of, then I'm way more motivated. So again, all of this comes with hindsight. At the time, I probably pretty immature and going, I don't really fancy it today, or I'd blow hot and cold. But had enough presentation skills, enough people skills to sort of get by and always hit what I needed to hit.
Isn't it funny that like you say, with hindsight, you look back on stuff and you're like, that's why I was feeling the way I was feeling. But as, a young man who has run into things his whole life, testosterone fueled young man, you just don't know that that's why you're feeling that way. And it can be completely disarming, can't it? You just don't know what to do. Yeah.
Well, I remember the guy, so first job's SDR, right? You set meetings for somebody else. Mm-hmm. There's this guy I worked with, Dan Sabeck, who was great for me, actually, just really nice guy. Met up with him last year, actually, after like 10, 15 years, because he's moved into our space a little bit. Okay. He said, hey, can I actually come pick your brain? So that was a bit of a nice full circle moment. But I remember he said at one point, just as a joke, but I didn't really get it at the time. He was like, I just agree with whatever Alex says. And I really went over my head. But like looking back, hindsight, I was like, I probably was carrying myself pretty arrogantly and going like, well, I think this, and wouldn't deliver what my thoughts were in a way that invited collaboration or working with people. But again, and he was smart enough and big enough, and hey, he's young, don't worry about it, he's still doing a job for me.
Yeah, of course.
So don't worry about it, just like make him feel part of the team. Whereas I can see why that would be really annoying to a bunch of other people.
100%.
Particularly if I'm carrying myself like a scrum half who's in charge of the ball.
Yeah.
Which, again, keep saying it, right? Hindsight.
Do you know, there's lots of things that I look back on throughout my career and I just think, like, how did the people around me put up with that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But luckily, there's people that, and like you say about that guy, there's people that see the good through the bad. And that just comes with experience. There's no other way to do it. So when were you sure about what your career was going to be, or are you still not sure?
Still not sure. I think I got to a point where I was just like, hey, like, unless you've got a better idea, do the absolute best you can at the thing you're doing. So this is probably my late 20s, or mid to late 20s. I worked for a sports technology company for a bit, and I loved everything that sort of the promise was, and the YouTube recruitment video and all this stuff. And I got there, and PE owned it, and then the culture dies and whatever. And I remember like I went into a room for like 2 weeks at one point with Google and their contract they were asking us to impose on clients, and going, I don't understand this contract, so I'm going to translate it to plain English so I know. Do I believe in what I'm selling? And at the end of that, because I was like, I don't anymore, even though I thought the product was great and the people I work with were great. I was like, this contract's not right. Get out of here. That's what led me to a RegTech business.
Was it?
Because I was just like, get me out. I'll take the first job that pays a reasonable salary. And
isn't it funny that that's how it happened?
Yeah.
Like you stumbled into the industry. Did you take that sports job because you still like have the
I was
passion
like,
for sport?
yeah, I was like, hey, maybe there's something, the business side of it, maybe that's something. I was just kind of, I'd done the SDR role, then I'd done a closing role. This was another closing role.
Yeah.
Hey, it's tech. So I learned how to sell software.
Yeah.
And then fortuitously, RegTech became a boom industry.
So RegTech, I'm learning this. So RegTech is regulatory technology. It's technology that can be applied to help a business adhere to regulations. Is that a fair definition, do you reckon?
Yeah.
What do you say RegTech? Give you your definition because you know it and I don't.
I mean, my little saying I normally say is that fintech gave birth to RegTech. So I think your definition is absolutely fine, but I think there was always businesses that sometimes were called GRC businesses, or governance, risk and compliance. And then we had the fintech boom, mid 2010s up to 2020ish.
So that's the Revoluts and the Monzos this world,
exactly,
financial technology.
Yeah, and then because what those guys did is wanted to go way faster and do things differently and do it leaner than banks, that required a different way to meet the regulatory overhead, and therefore RegTech becomes a thing.
Really, I've never thought of it like that. So like you've got banks and payments, then you've got fintech, then you've got GRC, then you've got RegTech.
So it's rebranding of something that probably already existed, but what happened is lots and lots of VC money's flown in, come in, lots more companies sprout up because of that. Lots of entrepreneurial people go, hey, that's a growth industry.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do something. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's how these things work, right? People follow the money.
Yeah. So when do you think RegTech began?
So if I was going to include the GRC technologies, probably like late 90s.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have thought of it as RegTech then. I think the stuff that we think about now, kind of the 2010 to 2015 period, and then it's matured through that, and now it's kind of really having its time because there's been some consolidation, but there's still a lot out there. There's still a lot of trial and error, trial and improvement, hopefully. And people are more conscious of the fact that, hey, technology solutions applied to these processes that aren't necessarily fun, aren't necessarily sexy. Like, it's really important. It can drive huge operational efficiency. It can make us better at playing what I call the infinite game against criminals.
Do you know what? That's just made so much about what I do make sense. Because, and I put a thing out just recently and said that it's difficult as a RegTech to displace one of these GRC businesses because no one gets fired for buying the incumbent or renewing the incumbent's license. And it's something that we've always found difficult, is trying to convince people that this technology solution is better than the incumbent because it's a risk.
Yeah, and I'd normally think about it I don't imagine many people are at school going, I can't wait to work in compliance and risk. They fell into it much like we fell into our careers. And they fall into this career, and it's probably likely that people that do well in those careers self-select for being more risk-averse than average.
100%.
So therefore, to your point, if something's not broken, why fix it? And when is it broken? Well, when we get fined, if we get fined, or when we fail an internal audit, or when the CEO, CFO, COO says, this isn't working anymore, we're doing a transformation program and you're part of it, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, true.
So those things you kind of require for someone to be ready to buy. Now, I won't say this is everyone. I'm just talking about the middle of the bell curve.
Yeah.
There are some visionaries out there. There are some people who genuinely want to do this better and kind of get the idea that if we do it better, we actually have this amazing impact on the world of reducing corruption, crime. When you do that, there's more money available in the legitimate economy for people to go out and earn in the right way, and that creates a virtuous cycle versus a negative cycle where illegal money feeds organized crime, which feeds more crime, which feeds more illegal money, and so on. So you've got this competing circle, in which way are we going to push the momentum?
Did you know any of this when you started in RegTech? You just took the first job that got you out of the old job.
Yeah, I took that job, and all I knew was that Go Cardless had just started working with my rugby club, and they'd modernised how we did memberships. And I went, that's really cool. So I looked up the business and went, And I went to this interview, and they were like, hey, we want somebody to come in and own the insurance territory.
This was at Go Cardless?
No, this was at RDC, the screening business that Moody's acquired in 2020. And this was 2015, I was interviewing. I took the job in 2016.
Right.
And I said, is it insurance? I went, okay, sure. Would it be possible for me to also own the fintech territory? And they were like, well, what's fintech? And I was like, well, it's this thing. I think what you've told me means that they have the same obligations.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'd love to do that because it seems like a really interesting space. I went, sure. And so
this is selling RDC. So they said they wanted you to run which region?
They wanted me to do the insurance territory.
Insurance vertical. And then you said, actually, I think there's this thing that's going to happen, which is when Revolut, Monzo, and all these guys were starting out, right?
I didn't know about Revolut or Monzo at the time, but I knew about Go Cardless, and I assumed if there's one, there must be many. And I did insurance for about 9 months, and then just went, you know what? They're not going to buy. They're not going to buy from me at 25 years old, and
course.
I don't look the part. Probably don't sound the part. I don't really have the lingo. But the fintech stuff had started to work as a side project, and then I went, I'm going all in, because if I don't, then I think I might get fired at some point. And a couple of years later, that was the fastest growing book, and continued to be even after I handed it over and left the business. But I left the business and I came back, so there's a plotted history there. But that was a bet that I made that paid off.
Love that.
And definitely. That was my intro to strategy when I think about it. I was like, I saw a trend, didn't understand it, but leaned into it. And then once I started to understand it, I started documenting what that was. I didn't know that at the time that was called ICP, Ideal Customer Profile. I didn't know that that's what it was called, but I just did it organically, naturally. Then I subsected it. Went, there's fintech, but there's 8 categories of fintech in my opinion. I had it on a whiteboard. Didn't know that people did subsegmentation or market sizing. Then I tiered it and went,
it's just logical, isn't it?
Yeah, I was like, this is all logical. And then what I found out since is that people with MBAs do this stuff for a living, and I went, oh, right.
So good.
Yeah.
Have you got those notes?
I do have a spreadsheet that I've kept, which I probably wasn't supposed to, but called the FinTech Master Sheet from like 2016, 2017.
I'd love to see how you ranked companies, and because then all of a sudden you could be a VC.
A lot of it was just gut feel, but
great, that's all it is.
But I would say that I'm pretty sure the math would back it up, and that's why I'm generally skeptical of overly complicated calculations. I think if you know the space, you probably know the space.
So you're in this company and you've had this idea, you've then done it, which is they're two separate things, right? So you've done it and it's gone well. You now know your career is going to be in like commercial strategy type roles, right?
I just kind of like, hey, this is going well, so keep doing it.
And you got proper money now as well.
Yeah, I started to make proper money and was like, oh wow, like I went from kind of I'm doing all right to oh Jesus, I had this goal in mind, which was to sort of what I would call sort of like go a step further than anyone in my family history, which to me was if you could earn 6 figures.
Yep. That was so many people you've spoken to, that has been the number.
That was the number.
Yep.
And I was like, if I do that, I've succeeded. And then it happened in half the time. Well, not even half the time. I thought it would take a career to get there, a whole career.
Because we were told that was the case.
Yeah.
And it is still, by the way, a remarkable amount of money to earn. Despite
100%.
What's happening, like, if you look at the population, it is tiny percent. Yeah. In our industry, I think we often forget, like when you work in software companies, RegTech, fintech, like people band these numbers around, but to so many people in the country, it's just remarkable that people would earn £100,000.
It's ridiculous. And I mean, I was of the opinion at the time, right, that in sales you don't actually get paid to do the deals, you get paid to put up with all the stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, there's a bit of that.
And because in theory, most people who can communicate could do the job, but only so many people have got the resilience to take all the heat that you get internally and to always be the person, you know, sort of being the nice one in every interaction. You know, as a buyer, you can get a bit, you can be the bad guy sometimes.
Yeah.
And
You're also told to sod off all the time in sales.
until you get to a certain point.
As well, right?
Yeah, so there's kind of like this, you've got to get through the hard yards and then it gets a bit easier. But so I, you know, even when people come to my door and pitch me, I always hear them out.
100%.
Because I'm just like, okay, cool. Probably not going to buy the thing, but good luck. I've done this job. I hope it goes well, and I hope you then find the next job after this, because don't do this forever, kind of thing.
Yeah, nice. So, you've got to the point where you think you know what's going on, like solid money's coming in. Why did you leave that business if it was going that well?
I'd done a partnership with a business called Passport to serve some of my existing customers who needed a one-stop shop.
Oh, so within the RDC stuff, you're like, actually, I think we can make this better by working with somebody else.
I'd drawn 4 flow diagrams of how people did onboarding, in my opinion, and monitoring.
Yeah.
And
so
then
onboarding, this is new customers, checking out who new customers are.
Yeah, basically bring a customer on board and giving them an account to something. And I've drawn this out and went, well, my bit is this bit, the screening bit and this monitoring bit. Yeah. And we do that really well. But when I go speak to these guys, they say, well, I've got this much resource. It needs to all be in one, and it needs to be fast, and it needs to be end to end. And so I had done a deal with a client that I won't name, and I'd said to the person that bought that, I was like, hey, I need one favour from you that I won't put in the contract, is I need introductions, because none of your peers have landlines, and so I can't call anyone. And he introduced me to a consultancy called FinTrail, who hosts the FinTech financial crime, the FFE, and at the time I had like 4 members, or 8 members or something. And then I met them and showed them my flow diagrams and what we did in screening that was different. And they went, oh, that's really interesting. You should meet this guy, Donald, who runs this company Passport, and they link together your flow diagram. So I met Donald and showed him my flow diagrams, and he showed me his. We went, oh, they're remarkably similar. So we're like-minded, and we have these joint customer opportunities. Let's go and ask them if they want us to integrate. So we did that, and we repeated that process a number of times. So we sold these deals, served these customers that had this challenge. Donald tried to get me over a few times. I think on the 3rd or the 4th time I said yes. And in my head, what I was doing was I was sacrificing the sort of guaranteed money in the commission to take a shot at trying to jump a few levels. And hey, if we exit this business, probably going to be all right. Lots of lessons learned in terms of always get stuff in writing. I will say, so I just want to, for the record, so it didn't go well, right? This year I went and me and Donald sort of fell out to a certain extent, or stopped communicating well. We were great partners. I wasn't a good employee, and he probably wasn't the right manager for me. We've reconnected since, because Moody's, we went and acquired that business. And I've said my piece, he said his. Both own a lot of the errors in that, and we've both sort of said that to each other. So I don't want to say this went wrong because, but I think what he thought he was hiring me for was a totally different understanding of what I thought he was hiring me for. So there was this miscommunication from the start.
That's hard. And look, I'm in his position, right? And there's mistakes that I've made with people management and wrong people in the wrong roles and all that sort of stuff. And it's not it's not personal or malicious or anything else. I think it never ever is. It just you, as a founder, you've got this like crazy noise of keeping all the people you mentioned at the start for me happy. And you know, one day you're like, I've got to keep the shareholders happy. The other day I've got to keep the team happy, and then I've got to keep myself happy. And it's a really hard balance. And I'm sure the conversations that you've had afterwards has been like, shit, where was your head at that time? You know, you probably weren't doing a malicious thing. We were all trying to get the best out of each other, you know?
Well, I think there was 2 sort of viewpoints I offered, which was when I left that business, I had a couple of months sort of garden leave, and so I was doing up a house at the time, so I was sanding stuff and I was painting walls, and great time to put podcasts on, right?
For sure.
And one of the ones I got into was the Jocko podcast, and this idea of extreme ownership, which is that any situation, take full ownership of what happened. And people go, oh, but this person did this, and it's like, but how did you respond? 100%. How did you handle it? So when that job didn't materialize that I thought I'd agreed to, how did I handle it? Really badly. Not in terms of, you know, having big arguments or storming off, but I essentially downed tools to a certain extent. I didn't put the full effort in that was required in that role. And I never pulled people aside and said, I don't know what's going on, help me.
You've come off the back of creating something and making it a big success as well. You know, the deciding for IDC to go into the fintech. So all of a sudden you've got this confidence and this like momentum behind you.
And then
you think you're going up, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no.
I know, So there's that track, and then the other track, right, which I said we had this conversation. It's like, no, we both own a lot of the errors here. But you know, you learn a lot. You go, hey, whatever potential earnings I might have missed out on the commission or the thing, young enough to make it back at some point. Whatever. And I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't had that experience.
So where did you go from there? Is that when you went to Moody's?
So I went and got a couple of job offers, one from a quite innovative French-based RegTech, and then one from a parcel competitor. And then they weren't well, one of them was recruiting, but I was through a guy, Tom Richardson, who's really connected in this space and does a lot of the headhunting for commercial staff.
I was spoken to him before.
Good guy.
Golf,
6 or 7, you can't miss him.
Dude.
And so I got those, but I'd always promised the boss that I resigned to that I would always come speak to her before I took any other job, because I had so much respect for her. A lady called Bron Ellis, just a superstar of a lady and a professional. And she basically said, look, if we're going to bring you back, I know what you need something different because you want to be engaged, and you'd already started to lose interest because you'd mastered the thing you were doing. So she pitched a couple of roles, created one, went and worked essentially still a sales role, but it was took over partnerships and resellers for EMEA for RDC, and 3-4 months later Moody's acquired it. And
that's effectively what you did with Passport. That's the semblance of a channel and partnership strategy is what you created by doing those flowcharts, taking them to FinTrail and getting connected. So
exactly. So it was
formalised it.
It was more of that rather than selling to customers, selling wholesale to be resold, and slightly different challenge. That led to the, hey, you know how to do that, so can you plug it into the Moody's tools once we acquired? That led to asking for the product strategy job, that led to the strategy fixer role, that led to the commercial strategy group. So I can link it all together, and you asked me what I want to do. Well, to continue to help the team win. That's kind of it, because I enjoy the competition, the engagement, the constantly thinking. I actually like it. We had a team workshop the other month. You came and we did the run, right? And someone said afterwards, what did you think? So I always get a different member of the team to plan each workshop, so they all get an experience of running that. And I was like, thought it was really good. We had lots of social time, downtime, which I think the whole team enjoyed. Personally, for me, I actually enjoy work. So I can deal with less downtime if we do more stuff, but that's me, and that's different to the vast majority. So I have, again, being self-aware enough at this point to kind of go, this is okay. If you want to work, you can go do it, after the drinks in your room, whatever, that's all good. Or ideally before the drinks in the hour you get between. But or go for a run at 6 a.m. with Liam Chennells and talk shop. I'll get it in somewhere.
I think those things are just so important. They're so critical. I don't know. It fascinates me every time I see you. You're like, I'm thinking about how we change this thing. And I think that being in a big company and holding on to that entrepreneurial spirit is just so important.
I think that's the fun thing, right? We talk about startups versus corporate life a lot, and I believe I can do both. Although the first experience didn't work out, I learned a lot, and I kind of did it at an RDC in a sort of microcosm in my own little building the territory from zero to a decent amount. But it's a different challenge because in an entrepreneurial startup world, you go find the thing, and it's not really there is a strategy, but it's about being so agile and being able to follow the move. Whereas in a big business, there are so many things you could do, and it's about calling your shot and saying, no, we're not going to do that. We can make money from that, but we're not going to do it because we believe we can make even more over here. And it's going to take this long, and we're going to have to do this amount of change management. Or the thing I really learned the last few years is you can have the best idea, you can be absolutely right on the logic, but unless you can secure the hearts and minds of everyone you're going to work with, it doesn't matter. You're better to do the wrong thing that they buy into. Now, I try not to do that as well. I'd rather do the change management, but that's been the big learning that I continue to strive for.
You're, for the first time in a very senior job in a very big company, right? If you look at across your career, now is the biggest role in the biggest company. So you're going to have these things that you just don't know.
Yeah. I think it's the, you shouldn't project as well, right? I think I did a lot of that early on in not this role necessarily, but in my 20s, like you assume other people are just like you, that they're just as ambitious, that they understand everything that you can see that's obvious.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever found this, if you ever coached sport, but I coached a lot of rugby when I was injured, and I was said not a great defender in terms of pure contact, very good with the ball and attacking, I would say, like, or relative. I found it really hard to coach attack because to me it was so obvious. So how do I tell someone how to do something that should be instinctive? But in defense, I found it so easy to coach. Because I was like, you have to do this and you have to do this to make them do this, because otherwise you're going to have this person run at you.
It's because you thought about it.
Yeah. Because I had to work so hard at the thing I sucked at. I think that's
it's a hard thing to get your head around.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, because we're close to time, I'm going to ask you for some industry predictions.
Oh, okay.
Because you're so in the middle of the industry that we're in. So industry prediction I'm going to ask you for is from a consumer perspective, whether that be a business consumer or a consumer, how is identity going to change most in the next few years?
See, I think it's a bit of a cliche. There's that line around we overestimate what's going to change in 2 or 3 years, but we probably underestimate the 10-year.
Yeah, that's true.
So my thing would be that because of the pace of change and the pace of adoption in our specific sector, I think there won't be huge amounts. I think the IDV, the identity piece, will get better. I think there'll be more signals. I think there'll be partnerships and or consolidation of things coming together so that we can serve the whole use case better. But I don't think necessarily the decentralized world or the token-based stuff is going to take off in that way and suddenly be the main way that we do identity. Over 10 years, maybe. But I think there's a lot of buyers whose minds would have to be changed, and a lot of regulators who have to regulate as such to provide the baseline for that to then be the thing that boards and COOs and CEOs tell their compliance and risk people to get on with. So maybe not loads in identity. I think it's more about doing what we currently do better. And when I speak to sort of practitioners, that seems to be their view as well. I say, like, has anything changed over the last 2 or 3 years? Here's what I believe to be true. And they go, nope, still the same. If you could just, all of you, vendor ecosystem, be better at what you currently do, that would help.
Because the threats are changing, right?
Threats are changing. I mean, I've had some really interesting conversations the last month or so, one about synthetic identity and dark web data, and we're going to do a podcast on that. And these other threats, other signals. But again, it's still all coming into going to external providers, providing this information, and then making a risk-based judgment based on the strength of the evidence that you have as to real or not real, and legit, not legit. And then bringing on and scoring it low, medium, high risk, or some variation of that, and then doing your due diligence accordingly. There's so much low hanging fruit, right? Just getting you and I both work in workflows, right? So workflows and automation. It seems obvious because it's now been available for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and yet most businesses still don't have it buttoned down, either because not had the imperative from up high in their firms, or they haven't understood the business case, or they've not had the tech people available, or they don't appreciate the vendor capability that's out there, or some combination of those things. So there's loads of improvement just by implementing what we have today, rather than inventing the next great technology.
I think that a lot. I say it often that we speak to banks that are still sending people spreadsheets. Cool. Thanks ever so much. I really enjoyed that. And that concludes another episode of Not What I Expected. I hope you loved that as much as I loved recording it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't, tell us how you think it could be better. Thanks, and see you again.